Okay, next let's talk about seventh chords. And this is true for all seventh chords regardless of what kind of chord it is. And let me just, before we move off of triads, use that to say one more thing about this, which is these inversion names do not care whether we're major or minor. Like if this was a minor triad, let's make it one. There we go. Now it's a C minor chord. If it's a 1 chord, we're going to do this, but the 6 is unaffected. It's still in first inversion. So the inversion doesn't change at all if it's major or minor. Okay, so let's go over here and let's do the same thing with C. Okay, so there is my root position 7th chord. If we're in the key of C, which we are, then this is a major 7th chord. That's fine. Minor 7th chord, dominant 7th chord, it's not going to matter in terms of inversions. So let's spell out all our inversions here. Put the C up there. The next one, we put the G on the bottom. Oops, skipped a note. And then the 7th on the bottom. Okay, so there are 4 now that we have 4 notes, right? There are 4 possible inversions. These are all C major in their C major 7 in its 4 possible inversions. Okay, so let me grab this nomenclature here. Let me grab this. Okay, so this one, same deal. We can write 1 on it, but we have to somehow indicate the 7. So the way we would do that is just with a 7. So if we saw 1 7 like that, that means root position. Because, for the same reason as before, our biggest interval is a 7th. From the lowest note to the highest note, it is a 7th. Inside of it, we have a 5th and then a 3rd. So kind of like this being 3 5, we leave off that 3 5 because we don't need to see it. It's assumed. So this is technically 7 5 3, but we leave off that 5 3 and we just say 1 7. Root position 7th chord. Okay, let's go to our next one. What is this one? So our highest interval from E to C is actually a 6, right? And then what do we have? A 5 and then a 3. But we're not just going to call this 1 6, right? Because if we just called it 1 6, that doesn't tell me that. To me, 1 6 means this, right? But we're on a 7th chord here, so 1 6 doesn't work. I need to know more than that. So in this case, because we need to know more than that, we're going to call it a 6 5. Because here's a 6th, here's a 5, and then a 3, we already know that. So we're going to include the 5 this time because we need a little more information than just the 6 in this kind of a case. Because we need to know it's a 7th chord, right? Let's go on to our next one. 1. And what are we going to call this one? So our biggest interval is G to E, so another 6. Our second biggest interval is a 4, so G to C. So we have 6 4, but again, we don't want to call it a 6 4 because that means this, right? And and then we have a 3. So what we could call this is a 6, 4, 3. That would be technically correct, but that would be like that. But that's a little cumbersome. So instead, let's call it a 4, 3. Let's leave that 6 off and just call it a 4, 3. So we just call that one a 4, 3, and that tells us it's a 7th chord. You know, there's a clue here in that whenever you see two numbers that are 1 digit apart, 6, 5, 4, 3, you can tell that it's a 7th chord, because that's the only possible way that can happen, is that if this is a 7th chord, there's going to be two notes, a half or whole step apart, depending on the quality of the chord. Let's look at our next one, our last one. Okay, what do we have here? This one's a little goofy. So our lowest note to our highest note is a B to a G, so another 6, and then 4, B to E, and then 2. So 6, 4, 2. Again, we could do that, but that's a little cumbersome. So let's do like what we did before and cut off our 6. Now we're left with a 4, 2. And what's interesting here is that this 2, this is the only inversion that has a 2 in it, right? 4, 3, 6, 5, 7, 6, 4, 6, and nothing. Even this, nothing, would be 5, 3. So no other inversion has a 2 in it. So for shorthand, why not just use that 2? And in fact, that's what we do. So when you see a 2 on a Roman numeral, it means 7th chord with the 7th in the bass. So this is a C major chord with the 7th as the lowest note. It's probably the rarest one you find, but not very rare, actually. It's, you know, it's all over the place. We'll see it. So those are our inversion names. How we name them, why they're called that. So how it should work is, let's say I did this. Let's say I gave you this. 1, 4, 3, and I said we're in the key of D major. You should know exactly what notes to put in here. And they would be, in the key of D major, you could just start off by writing out your D major triad, but let's actually do that. And it's a 4, 3, so we actually need a 7th, which is going to be C sharp. Okay, so it's not that. Let's do our next inversion. F sharp, A, C sharp, D. It's not that. Let's do one more. A, C sharp, D, F sharp. So that is the correct answer. So in the key of D, 1, 4, 3 is that. Okay? So that's basically what figured bass is, that we'll be talking about shortly, is that you're going to get the symbol and the numbers, and you got to figure the rest out on your own. It's kind of tricky, but I'll show you how to do it. Don't worry. Okay, so now that we're all squared away with inversion names, let's move on to talking about the 5/7 inversions and resolving those inversions, because when we are working with inversions like this, our tendency tones end up in weird spots. So we're going to go back to our SATB situation and talk about resolving these sevenths correctly.